Welcome to our video tutorial on graphing square root functions. So the first thing that we looked at is when we have a situation like this inside of our square root, just like we did previously with rationals, we need to factor out the negative. Once we have factored out the negative, we can do two things. We can identify the center point, akin to how we've done in the past with other functions. But now what we have to look at is two other things. If there's a negative in front of the square root, that means the graph will open down. And if there is a negative inside the square root, that means that our graph will open, instead of to the right, it will open to the left. So in this particular example, we know where the starting point is. We know it's down and to the left. So we will now plot our axes. Draw them reasonably based on how the center point is and where we're supposed to be going. Please make sure that we label our axes, the x-axis and the y-axis. We're going to 5, 1 to start. Now with the square root, what we're thinking about here is normally the square root of 0 is 0, the square root of 1 is 1, and the square root not of 2, we don't know that, but the square root of 4 is equal to 2. So we're going to go over 1, down 1, in the direction that we've specified. And then we're going to go over 4, down 2, in the direction that we've specified. However, that would be wrong because we also have this 2 out front, which means we have to multiply those vertical changes by 2. So instead of being down 1, it's down 2. And instead of being down 2, it's down 4. The original point is still at that center location, and then we would draw it in. Please realize there's only an arrow on one end, the other end, it's simply an endpoint. Let's go to our second of 3 examples. Again, the first thing that we want to do is rearrange what's inside the square root. Notice once we do that, we don't need to factor a negative out front. We can simply identify the center point. In this case, it's 4, negative 2. Looking out front, there is a negative, which means that this graph will open down instead of up. But when we look inside of the square root, next to the x, it's positive. That means that we will be going to the right. So now we will draw our axes in, keeping in mind where we need to go based on the point that we have. And actually, since that point is what it is, I'm going to draw this up higher here. We will call this the x-axis, as it is the x-axis, and there's our y-axis. Center point is at 4, negative 2. Now we're going down into the right. Keep in mind the square root of 0 is 0. The square root of 1 is 1. And the square root of 4 is 2. So we are using these items to plot the points. And in this example, notice there's a 3 out front. So we will be multiplying by 3 to get those positionings. So normally it would be over 1, down 1. But because of the multiply by 3, we're going to go over 1, down 3. And then normally it would be over 4, down 2, but because of the multiply, we're going to be down 6 instead. So we connect those dots, round it off, put the arrow there, but the other spot is just simply an endpoint. That's all we really need to do. One final example. Here's h of x. So first thing that we're going to do is fix this up. When we factor out the negative inside of the square root, well, it's just going to be a positive x, but the 2 is going to become negative. So in this problem, our center point is at 2, 3. We're opening up and we're opening to the left. Now why is that? Up because it's a positive 5 outside of the square root. To the left because we had a negative inside of the square root. So we will now make our axes accordingly. This thing is going up, so we'll put it down so we have plenty of room. Label our x-axis, label our y-axis. We're going to start at the point 2, 3, and now we go, remember, square root of 0 is 0, square root of 1 is 1, and square root of 4 is 2. But we're multiplying by 5 as well in this problem, so keep that in mind as we go. So ordinarily we would go over to the left 1 and up 1, but because we're multiplying by 5, we're going to go up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we're going to go over 4. Ordinarily we would go over 4 and up 2, but we're multiplying by 5, so instead of up 2, we'll be up 10. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 up here. Okay, now draw this in, and I'm going to draw it this way because I think it's a little bit easier for me to draw it like this. Keep in mind that it's opening up and to the left. Here it's just simply an endpoint, and that would be our graph. So hopefully this gives us a perspective on how to graph these radical square root functions. First, watch for negatives inside of the square root, factor it out if applicable. Identify the center point, determine if it's going up or down, left or right, and if there's any multiple involved. That will get you the graph you need.